What's up YouTube, capital G here, checking out the brand new Senka archetype that just got revealed coming out of Ignition Assault. Some people are calling these the Asian Noble Knights, although they seem to have a playstyle that's more kind of a cross between Six Samurai and For Hire. Definitely feels like a beatdown, rushdown strategy. I think that the archetype's theme is based on Romance of the Three Kingdoms. If you guys have ever played the old Romance of the Three Kingdoms video games by Koei, I was more of a Dynasty Warriors guy myself, but I digress. Anywho, first monster is Senka Intermediary Sun Mao. This is a level 4 Water Beast Warrior monster. It is very strange to me that this archetype is Beast Warrior and not just Warrior because, looking at the appearance of the monsters, but I guess Konami wants to keep pushing them spicy, tinky reprints, I guess. Anyways, your second and third have hard once per turn. Your first effect says your opponent cannot target this card for an attack while you control another Senka monster. Second effect, you can send one card you control or in your hand to the graveyard. That's a cost. Add one Senka monster from your deck to your hand, except another copy of this card. Third effect, if another Senka monster's effect is activated, you can target one monster your opponent controls, return that monster to the hand. So that's why I say that this archetype feels kind of like For Hire. For Hire is an archetype where when you special summon one of the dudes, the guy that's already on the field will activate. A lot of these monsters have effects where if you activate another Senka monster, their effects will kick in, and that third effect is it's a nice little removal effect, especially for just pushing through your opponent's monsters. I mean, this is kind of like the searcher for the archetype. It can search basically like anything or any monster, I should say, so it is kind of the Stratos. It does come at a cost, and that does kind of suck, but I mean, it's a nice way of getting to other monsters in the archetype. Next up is another level 4 Water Beast Warrior monster in the archetype. This is Senka Adonis Zhao Gong. 1600 attack, 1600 defense, hard once per turn on each effect. First effect, you can target one continuous spell/trap you control, send it to the graveyard, and if you do, add one Senka spell/trap from your deck to your hand. Second effect, if another Senka monster is activated, you can target one monster your opponent controls and negate its effects for the rest of the turn. So this is your spell and trap searcher. The last card was the monster searcher. It's not quite as easy to activate because you have to use a card on field. You can't use something in your hand. This archetype does have continuous spells and traps. They have a little bit of utility. There's a couple of them that when they go to the graveyard, they activate, but it's nothing as bonkers as True Draco. That's what I thought it would be. I thought it'd be oh man, all the spells and traps when they go to the graveyard, they blow your opponent's stuff up. Nothing that good. But again, this is just kind of a way of getting to all your spells and traps in the archetype. We have the Senka Tactician Lu Jing. This is your level 4 Water Beast Warrior monster. 700 attack, 2000 defense, hard once per turn on both effects. First effect is pretty much the same as the last card or very similar. You can target a continuous spell trap you control, send it to the graveyard, and if you do, add one Senka spell or trap with a different name from your graveyard to your hand. So instead of searching one from your deck, you basically get the recover one. The second effect is if another Senka monster effect is activated, you can target a spell or trap your opponent controls, destroy that card. So I think the second effect of this card is stronger than the last one. Instead of being an effect failure on your opponent's monsters, you just get rid of one of their back row. However, I'm not sure recovering your spells and traps in this archetype is really all that strong, especially considering it has to be different, it has to have a different name than the card you send to the graveyard. The Tactician seems okay. It's probably matchup dependent because, if you play against a deck that doesn't run a lot of back row, then obviously that second effect is not going to be all that powerful. But if you are playing against a deck that's kind of back row heavy, you're playing against Striker or Altergeist, then that can definitely be kind of strong. We have Senka Noble Lu Zhang. I probably butchered that name. This is a level 4 Wind Beast Warrior. So this archetype is wind based and it's water based, which that is a super strange mix for an archetype in my opinion. 1400 attack and 1200 defense, second and third hard once per turns. First effect, your opponent cannot target this card for an attack while you control another Senka monster. Second effect, if you control fewer monsters than your opponent, you can send one card you control or in your hand to the graveyard, special summon one Senka monster from your deck, except another copy of yourself. Third effect, if an attack is declared for battle involving another Senka monster you control, you can draw one card. This seems like one of their strongest cards in the archetype. I just don't like the fact that you have to have less monsters on field than your opponent to activate the second effect. I mean, being able to summon any Senka monster from your deck to your hand, that's pretty damn good, especially considering the monster does not have to come in defense mode. The monster can be summoned in attack. There are high level 7 monsters in this archetype that have very strong stat lines, so this card can obviously allow you to push for damage. But again, why do I have to have less monsters on field than my opponent? That kind of makes me think that this is a go second deck, because it's not the only card that has that type of condition built into it, and it does require kind of like a cost. It requires like a discard, so I feel like you should have been able to go first and still activate that. But it's one of the stronger effects in the archetype, especially considering some of the monsters we're about to talk about now. The first one, or our first level 7, is Senka Justice Gone Yoon. This is a level 7 Beast Warrior Wind attribute monster, 2500 attack and 1800 defense. So now we're starting to get to like the boss monsters of the archetype, and yeah, summoning a 2500 attacker from my deck, that's pretty damn legitimate. So this guy says your third effect is a hard once per turn. First effect, if only your opponent controls monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. Second effect, other Senka monsters you control cannot be targeted by your opponent's effect. Third effect, if your opponent controls more monsters than you, you can target one monster your opponent controls, destroy that target. This card is absolutely phenomenal. Like, honestly, I looked at this card and I was like, dude, I don't even think you need to run this card in its own archetype. I looked at it and I immediately thought of something like Dino Wrestler Simca Traps. If you are playing just, I mean, I'm talking about outside of the Senka deck, if you're playing a blind go second deck, I would love to just special summon this card from my hand, get a 2500 body on board, and then just blow up one of my opponent's monsters for free. That is absolutely amazing. So yeah, this card in a vacuum is awesome. I think that this is a boss monster that you can draw, considering obviously if you're going second, your opponent's going to have a monster ideally on the field and you won't. This guy is a free +1 because it blows up one of their monsters, and this is an excellent card to summon from your deck because again, it just blows up a monster if your opponent has more monsters than you. So this card to me is just really strong. Next up, the other level 7, this is Senka Champion Zhang Di, also is a Wind Beast Warrior level 7. It has 2700 attack and 900 defense. Your first and third are hard once per turns. If you control 2 or more Senka monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. This card gains 300 attack for each monster your opponent controls during its controller's turn only. Third effect, if your opponent controls more monsters than you, you can activate this effect during this turn. This card can attack monsters your opponent controls twice during each battle phase. That effect, like, it looks nice, but I actually don't think it's very useful because this card is 2700 attack. So if you're just running over your opponent's monsters, what's stopping them from just dying in battle and then you not being able to attack them again? Unless I'm like missing something here. Usually cards that have this type of effect, things like Lunar Light Panther Dancer, Lunar Light Cat Dancer, they have effects that specifically say that the monsters are not destroyed by battle the first time that they would be destroyed. This card doesn't have that, so I think that that third effect is, I don't know, kind of pointless unless there's just honestly something I'm missing. If I am missing something, you guys feel free to correct me in the comment section. Then we have their continuous spells or traps. The first one, it's Senka Legend, the 3 visit. This is a continuous spell card. It says during the second standby phase after activation, send this card to the graveyard. You got your hard once per turns on both effects. First effect says during your main phase, if you normal or special summon a Senka monster or monsters, you can target one of them. Add one Senka monster from your deck to your hand with a different name than that target. Second effect, if this card is sent from the spell and trap zone to the graveyard, special summon one Senka monster from your hand. Okay, so this card is absolutely amazing. I think you should be running 3 copies of it. Basically, just activate this card, summon a Senka monster by any means, and then you get the Rhoda for a different Senka monster. Then you can activate the first guy on field's effect, send this card to the graveyard for one of your utility effects. Then you can activate this card's graveyard effect, and you can special summon the monster that you just search with this card's first effect. So, seems pretty easy to activate both of these effects in one turn. Again, I don't really see a reason why you wouldn't can run 3 copies of this card. It's a Rhoda, and it also lets you special summon from your hand, so definitely going to be a card you're maxing out on. We have a Senka Legend, the Sun Lu Alliance. I probably butchered that. It's a continuous spell card, and you have a hard once per turn on the second effect. If you control 2 or more Senka monsters with different attributes, you can declare one attribute. The effects of all monsters your opponent controls of the declared attribute cannot be activated until the end of this turn. If your opponent special summons a monster or monsters, or if you activate a Senka monster's effect, all Senka monsters you control gain 300 attack for each Senka monster you control until the end of this turn. So this feels like kind of a utility effect, and definitely like another card that just kind of tells me that this deck wants to rush your opponent down as quickly as possible. You activate that second effect after you've activated a Senka monster effect, then you can just gain massive amounts of attack. Let's just say you have 3 monsters on field. All of your monsters will gain all your monsters will gain 900 attack at that point, and that can be 2700 free damage, which obviously can lead to like OTKs and stuff like that. Lastly, we have the Simca Trap card. This is Senka Legends, champions bravery at the Chang Bang Bridge. It has a second and third effect that are hard once per turns. The first effect says if your Senka monster battles, your opponent cannot activate spell and trap cards until the end of the damage step, so kind of turns them into Armades type deal monsters. Second effect, at the start of your opponent's battle phase, if this card is face up in your spell and trap zone, you can send this card to the graveyard for the rest of this turn. Your opponent cannot target Senka monsters for attacks. Third effect, if your opponent's monster declares an attack, you can banish this card from your graveyard, special summon 1 Senka monster from your deck. So to me, this feels kind of like a failsafe. I think again that the playstyle of this deck should be go second and try to OTK your opponent, but this definitely feels like a card that says, okay, I wasn't able to OTK, I can flip this card over. It basically becomes a threatening roar, essentially, where my opponent can't attack. And then the third effect allows you to, I guess, if there's a turn later, potentially summon a monster from your deck for free. So that kind of feels like it does pay for itself, considering on field it is a little bit of a neg 1. And yeah, definitely feels like a card that can help you get to that OTK, especially considering you're locking out spells and traps during, you know, the battle phase or when your monster is actually declaring an attack. Overall, this is a very interesting archetype. I would have liked to see maybe a little more utility from their spells and traps, but again, it definitely reminds me of like Fur Hire and Six Samurai. Anyways, whatever you guys think of Senka, leave it in the comment section below. Thank you guys for watching. As always, subscribe if you have not already, and turn on that notification bell for daily videos.